Spider-Man 2, the 2004 second entry in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, with all its weird and awkward early to mid-2000s tropes.
Go, Spidey, go!
Where once again Peter Parker, played by Tobey Maguire, is trying his damn hardest to be both Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and boy does the world just keep putting this poor kid down. Seriously, this time round, Peter just can't seem to catch a break, where his feelings continue to grow for Mary Jane Watson, played by Kirsten Dunst. But she is in another relationship as Peter won't commit, and Peter's best friend Harry, played by James Franco, is sworn to kill Spider-Man in order to avenge his father's death. All these troubles, along with bad college grades and the inability to hold a job, lead Peter to start to lose his powers, as he doesn't want to be Spider-Man anymore. And what's worse is that Dr. Otto Octavius, played by Alfred Molina, has been fused with artificial intelligence mechanical arms in an experiment gone wrong, where he becomes the sinister Dr. Octopus, where he tries to recreate the power of the sun with the whole city at stake. Only Peter Parker can stop him, but can he overcome his identity crisis in time? Spider-Man 2, in my opinion, is without a doubt the best Spider-Man movie ever. It's like they took all the things that worked in the first movie and just perfected it, while leaving behind all the stuff that didn't really work. So to celebrate this movie, let's look into 10 things that you didn't know about Spider-Man 2.
With great power comes great responsibility.
No, Uncle Ben. I'm just Peter Parker. I'm Spider-Man. No more.
Number 10, original title. After the massive success of the first Sony Spider-Man movie, which saw the pairing of director Sam Raimi and actor Tobey Maguire, a sequel was immediately greenlit and went into production, with the next Spider-Man movie coming out as soon as possible, with a release date being scheduled for 2004, and was given a budget of $200 million, $71 million more than the first Spider-Man movie. So Sony clearly had complete trust and confidence in their new Spider-Man brand. What's really fascinating is the original title of the sequel wasn't Spider-Man 2, but rather The Amazing Spider-Man, named after the original title of the comic books that Spider-Man is based off. However, as the production went on, it was changed to Spider-Man 2, probably to ensure that audiences will know that this is the second chapter to the previous movie. This is probably irrelevant, but I can remember I used to go on a DVD website in Australia called Easy DVD, which would show you all the upcoming DVD releases in this country. And when Spider-Man 2's DVD release was announced, it was actually titled as The Amazing Spider-Man. Weird, huh? Number 9. The original story was going to be very different. It makes sense that for the second Spider-Man movie to focus on Spider-Man's next big villain after the Green Goblin, that being Dr. Octopus, who made his first appearance in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 3 in 1963, where he's displayed as being a mad scientist with metallic octopus tentacles. However, the original depiction of Doc Ock in the original Spider-Man 2 script is drastically different to what we got. Originally, Doc Ock was closer in age to Peter Parker, where after his fusion with the mechanical arms, he becomes obsessed with Mary Jane. It's also revealed that the fusion his mechanical arms has with his spine is slowly killing him, where he devises a plot to kill Spider-Man and use his Spidey spine on the account that it's genetically modified and can cope with the AI fusion. There was also a subplot where it's revealed that Doc Ock actually engineered the spider who bit Peter Parker in the first movie, and he also creates an antidote to remove Peter's Spidey powers. As well as another plot where Harry puts up a $10 million bounty on Spider-Man, which turns the whole city against him. Wow, Spider-Man 2 sounds like it could have actually been a pretty bad movie. But thankfully, rewrites took place, which led to the story that we got, where Doc Ock is not motivated by being obsessed with MJ, but rather a love of science. Number 8. The final script took inspiration from Superman 2 and an old Spider-Man comic. Director Sam Raimi was flicking through several potential scripts for Spider-Man 2. Raimi wanted to use themes and concepts from Superman 2, in which in that film we see Superman abandon his superpower duties and become human, where by the end of that movie he realizes that he made a mistake, where he would go on to embrace his superhero lifestyle. Raimi wanted to explore the idea of Peter Parker losing his powers because he's struggling to find balance between his personal life and being Spider-Man. And thus, an identity crisis causes his powers to diminish. Scriptwriting legend Alvin Sargent was hired to rewrite the script, which included making Doc Ock more of a tragic victim, rather than a straight-up villain, and also making him more of a mentor to Peter, with the movie ending with Peter helping Ock to redeem himself, making him a complex character. There was also heavy inspiration from the Spider-Man comic book, Spider-Man No More, a 1967 comic where Peter quits being Spider-Man after feeling that no matter what he does or who he saves as Spider-Man, no one appreciates him, where he embraces his new life of not being a superhero. However, while enjoying not being a superhero, the new villain Kingpin unleashes his reign of terror. Spider-Man 2 even recreates a famous visual from that comic, where Peter dumps his Spidey costume in a trash can in an alleyway and walks away. Number 7. Spider-Man 2 could have seen a different Spider-Man. Naturally, after starring in the first Spider-Man movie, Tobey Maguire was in demand, and 1 year later in 2003, he starred in the movie Seabiscuit, which was a movie based on a real-life racing horse, where Maguire played a real-life horse racing jockey called Red Pollard. However, during the filming of Seabiscuit, Maguire had injured his back.
My back! Oh, my back!
And there was a race for the actor to heal, especially in time to film the then upcoming Spider-Man 2. However, Sony started to panic in anticipation that Maguire may not be fit to return as the web-slinger, where they got a backup in the form of Jake Gyllenhaal to take over the role of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, in case Maguire was unable to return. Which I guess makes sense, as when they were younger, the two actors did actually look quite similar. In fact, they would go on to play brothers in a movie called Brothers. Thankfully, Maguire made a full recovery and was able to return to the part, and Gyllenhaal would eventually go on to play the Spider-Man villain Mysterio in Spider-Man Far From Home 15 years later. Also, I remember reading at the time of filming that Tobey Maguire and MJ actress Kirsten Dunst really didn't get along while making the movie, and frequently clashed. And if that's true, then they both deserve an Academy Award, as their on-screen chemistry was actually amazing. Number 6. Casting possibilities. So the most important part of casting when it comes to Spider-Man 2 is the casting of Dr. Octopus, who was one of Spider-Man's most celebrated villains, making his cinematic debut. Several veteran actors were considered for the part, including Robert De Niro, Ed Harris, and Christopher Walken. However, British actor Alfred Molina was cast in the part, as Raimi had liked his role in the movie Frida. But to me, he'll always be that guy who portrayed Indiana Jones at the start of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Molina is superb as Doc Ock. He doesn't feel as cartoony as the Green Goblin could, but like a real tragic character. He could be both sympathetic, but also very threatening and intimidating. And he is definitely one of the most interesting superhero villains. And it was glorious seeing his return recently in Spider-Man No Way Home. It honestly looks like he never left the part, and that no time has passed between 2004 to 2021. And no, that's not a spoiler, as his Doc Ock was all over No Way Home's marketing. Incidentally, while making Spider-Man 2, Molina gave a nickname to all 4 of his metallic tentacles, calling them Larry, Harry, Mo, and Flo.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
Number 5. The Willem Dafoe joke. Spider-Man 2 has actually been responsible for a lot of internet funnies over the years, of which have become increasingly popular over time, such as the J. Jonah Jameson laugh, where we see J.K. Simmons burst into uncontrollable laughter,
You serious?
and Peter Parker's landlord, aka the Rent Guy.
Rent?
However, the LOLs were already taking place during the filming of Spider-Man 2, as when Alfred Molina showed up on the set one time to film some scenes as Doc Ock, where director Sam Raimi thought it would be funny to have previous Green Goblin villain Willem Dafoe on set as Dr. Octopus, where to his shock and surprise, Molina saw the accomplished actor acting out his part. And to be fair, despite the fact that this is just a joke, a prank if you will, on Molina, Dafoe still actually made a pretty damn good Dr. Octopus.
Target is the fuel that makes this project go.
So I like to think that somewhere out there is a parallel universe where Dafoe played the role of Dr. Octopus. Despite being killed off in the first movie, Dafoe's Norman Osborn still has a cameo, where in spirit, he screams at Harry to avenge him. This scene was actually an idea Dafoe had while making the first Spider-Man movie. He got the idea from Hamlet, in which the ghost of King Hamlet taunts his son to avenge him. Number 4. The director and composer had a falling out. For the original Spider-Man movie, Tim Burton regular Danny Elfman came on board and delivered a masterful score, which gives Spider-Man a powerful and distinct sound, full of wonder, amazement, tragedy, and excitement, without sounding anything like what Elfman had previously done for Batman. So naturally he came on board to score Spider-Man 2. However, sadly at this time, it wasn't all smooth sailing, as unfortunately he and director Sam Raimi's working relationship had soured during the making of Spider-Man 2, with Elfman going on to call working with the director this time round a miserable experience, and just didn't feel comfortable adapting his music. This caused Elfman to not return for Spider-Man 3, where instead Christopher Young took over. However, there are claims that Elfman helped him to score Spider-Man 3. Thankfully, Elfman and Raimi would patch things up later down the track, where he would collaborate with Raimi once again to score Oz the Great and Powerful. Well, at least they were able to eventually patch things up. Number 3. Deleted scenes. So as with most movies, Spider-Man 2 had its fair share of deleted scenes. Now a lot of the deleted scenes do kind of feel like filler, and that they would have slowed the movie down anyway. Such as the guy in the elevator trying to pitch a marketing business deal with Spider-Man, which wasn't particularly funny, and a longer scene of Peter Parker delivering pizzas to the receptionist. There's also a scene where we see Peter doodling in his exercise book during one of Connor's college classes, extended scenes of Peter's birthday celebration where Harry tells Peter that he wants Spider-Man dead, along with a scene where one of MJ's friends questions her as to if she's making the right decision in marrying Jonah's son. And yeah, it's pretty much flat out put in motion here that MJ is just getting married because she feels like she can't be with Peter. As well as more scenes of Spider-Man fighting Doc Ock, one of which is in someone's house, as well as more scenes on the train. The extended train fight in particular looks more vicious. I do, however, like this shot of Peter driving in the robber's car in his Spider-Man suit. But yeah, as mentioned, most of the deleted scenes are just filler that don't really need to be there. The only one that I wish they left in was the scene of Jonah playing around in the abandoned Spider-Man suit. It kind of actually gives a new dynamic to the character, suggesting that he actually might secretly like Spider-Man. And a lot of the deleted scenes would actually be added back into the movie for a special DVD release called Spider-Man 2.1. Number 2, the Spidey suit had to be altered due to the strangest of reasons. If you look at the Spider-Man suit for Spider-Man 1 and then the suit for Spider-Man 2, you'll see that there are slight changes and adjustments made. Nowhere is this more visible than with Spider-Man's chest spider logo, which as you can see in part 2 is higher up, thicker and larger. This was simply because Sam Raimi didn't want to have the Spider-Man logo cut in half when we would see the upper half of Spider-Man on screen. He wanted the logo to be fully on display the whole time without it being trimmed off at the bottom of the screen. And so thanks to this OCD style of filmmaking, Spider-Man had a new and glorious Spider-Man logo on full display. In fact, Sam Raimi put a lot of attention to detail when it comes to Spider-Man 2. The train sequence, which is a standout scene in the movie, for that scene, he actually started working on that sequence and storyboarding it while he was still working on the first movie. Yep, at that stage there probably wasn't even a script set in stone, but he already knew that he wanted an action-packed train sequence. I can actually remember watching Spider-Man 2 at the movie theatre and being blown away with that scene, finding the special effects of that sequence to be right up there with the T-1000 from Terminator 2 and the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. Speaking of Sam Raimi, the hospital scene where the doctors try to operate on Doc Ock's metallic tentacles, where they all meet grisly ends, was a callback to Raimi's horror days of filming the Evil Dead films, as some shots share similar visuals that were seen in those movies. In fact, the whole scene looks pretty horrific, like something out of a horror movie. And of course, being a Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, it has to have the obligatory Bruce Campbell cameo that all three of them have. Number 1. Exceeding expectations. Spider-Man 2 was released in June 2004, and it had the highest opening day intake, beating the previous movie, but its record would be broken the following year thanks to Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. Despite beating the original Spider-Man's opening day intake, it wouldn't go on to make as much as the original, with it making $789 million on a budget of $200 million. Whereas the first movie made $821 million on a budget of $139 million. But despite this, Spider-Man 2 was still very financially successful, with it becoming the second highest grossing movie of that year after... Shrek 2? Wow, how disappointing. Yeah, look, it was the 2000s. Spider-Man 2 was also really embraced by its fans, many of whom believed it to be better than the original movie. And even now, nearly 20 years later, many agree that Spider-Man 2 is the best entry in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. I honestly think that Spider-Man 2 is one of those rare occurrences when a sequel is actually better than its original. I was totally blown away when I first saw this movie, and I loved every second of it. What I really loved about Spider-Man 2 is how much it made me not want to be a superhero. Let me explain. As a kid, I used to watch the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, and wanted more than anything to be Superman, as it looked so awesome and glamorous. Spider-Man 2 shows us just how tough and difficult it actually would be to be a superhero, and how damn near impossible it would be to lead a normal double life. And at the start of the movie, I always feel so bad for Peter. The world around him literally treats him like trash and walks all over him. And his personal life just keeps falling apart because of his ties to Spider-Man, no matter how hard he tries to do the right thing. I mean, this poor kid couldn't catch a break. And yes, when he decides to end being Spider-Man, I can't blame him, I would stop it too. Plus all the drama Peter has to go through, like trying to find that connection with Mary Jane, trying to explain to Aunt May that he is responsible for Ben's death, and the turmoil of his best friend Harry vowing to kill his Spider-Man alter ego. So I said Spider-Man 2 made me not want to be a superhero, so how does that make Spider-Man 2 one of the best superhero movies of all time? Well, to me, because of the growth and strength of Peter and his determination when he decides that with great power comes great responsibility, and that he must carry on that mantle. It makes his achievements in Spider-Man 2 even more triumphant. Being a superhero may not be easy for him, but he still does what he feels is right, for the good of mankind, by putting his own wants and needs behind him in order to save those who need saving, and being a beacon of hope for those who need it. And there is nothing more heroic than that. I absolutely love this movie. And not only is Spider-Man 2 my favourite Spider-Man movie, but it's also one of my favourite superhero movies in general. It's an exciting comic book masterpiece. And once again, it just sort of perfects what the first movie does. Anyway, I'm Minty, and remember, there will always be great responsibility that comes with having great power. See that? Just see what I did there? Notice how I said the line, but I said it differently. See ya!